Right, well I'm going to be talking to you about Kanzume Goddess. This game I believe was on Kickstarter and then got shifted across to Indiegogo. Let's get some of the negatives out of the way first. This is the rulebook, as you can see. Big, long, thin strip of a rulebook, which is a bit of a pain. The next pain is that the game comes in a stupid tin. Looks cool and all that, but it's actually a menace. This is the plastic container the tin was in. That's what I actually end up storing my cards in particular because I sleeve them and you just can't put them back in the tin. The game's other negative is some people might not feel comfortable playing it because of the style, which is this kind of anime, manga, kind of slightly dubious artwork style. It doesn't bother me particularly, but some people have commented on it. The game features two pantheons of gods fighting each other, the Greeks and the Norse gods, and basically you track how healthy your god is via one of these cards. You're trying to get to 25 life. If it ever gets to 0, you're kind of dead. It plays really well as a two-player game, but you can also do multiplayer, and the great thing with the multiplayer is if you kill off what's known as the supporting gods, you reduce them to 0 energy. They don't instantly die, they slowly recharge their energy back up to 5 and then come back into the game. However, this can make for quite a long game, in particular because of the way the economy works. You have 3 basic cards that are always in play, and then a pile of 6 cards which are randomly shuffled together, and you only ever flip up the top card. I, for ease, have not necessarily put them all face down, but in the game they're all face down, and then you flip up the top card, and that's where you purchase from. And the way it works is you have 8 of these priestess cards, 2 of these sacred guardians which are used for defending you. You shuffle them up, you draw a hand of 5, you play all your hand. If they're generating faith, you generate the economy of the game, which allows you to buy all these cards. You can also use faith or your life to trigger your god's powers, and then on the cards themselves, some of them have powers as well. Now when you actually start playing the game, you'll be given a god, and there's various rules for how you distribute the gods for people to pick from, and pretty much all of them have 2 powers. For example, Zeus here, the slightly buff looking young man, he has rage and lightning. Now the game's broken down into various phases, and Zeus in the starting phase can choose to skip his play phase and basically just attack every single player in the game, and that's quite powerful. Basically you play all your warriors, as they're called, and they attack all the other gods. His other ability, lightning, is during your play phase you may perform Adjudication, which is basically flipping the top card of your deck into your discard pile, checking to see if it matches a type of card named here, which on this particular power is a warrior, and for every warrior that you reveal, for a warrior that you reveal, you can select any number of warriors in an enemy's hand and basically get rid of those cards, losing 1 energy for each card that you adjudicate. Banish. So that's quite a powerful ability. I'm going to be demonstrating the Valkyrie. She has 2 powers, Belief and Guide. Belief is whenever a disciple, which is one of these 3 starting cards, whenever a disciple is put into the netherworld, or the banishment zone if you prefer, you may activate this ability. If you do, put that card into your discard pile instead. So if you're trying to mill away my disciples, I can actually retain them with Valkyrie. But this power is particularly good. Whenever a warrior card is put into the netherworld, you may pay life, 1 energy. If you do, perform an Adjudication, and if the card you revealed is a disciple, you, rather than banish that warrior card, you have to give it to me and it goes into my discard pile. So quite a nice little ability. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to give myself 10 life. Obviously the rules specify what you start with. We're going to start with these 6 random cards. We've got the starters there, and then we've got my hand, which I did shuffle and draw. And one of the cards I drew was the Sacred Guardian. Now she has two effects, both of which are reactions, which are basically effects you can only play when someone does something. And this one, for example, is defense, defending value 2. So if someone attacks you, they have an attack value. You take away your defense value, and whatever's left over is the damage you take from your energy or your life pool. So she will stop 2 attacks. React, put this card into the netherworld to negate a god's ability. So if you've got this card in hand and someone does something horrible like discard a card off the top of your deck and you don't want them to do that, you can play this card as a reaction and say, no, I'll trigger this ability and do that. A key thing in the rules is, although you have 2 or possibly 3 actions here, you can only actually do one of those when you actually reveal the card. In fact, any card with more than 1 action or reaction, you typically can only do one or the other. You can't do both. And the God's powers, for example, you can't just infinitely trigger them. You trigger them and then they're spent. Now when you play Disciples, in particular of the Priestess variety, they generate 1 faith, which is this plus number here, and to purchase cards it's this number up in the top here. For example, 2 here, so I'd need 2 priestesses to get 1 priestess. So I've got 4 priestesses generating me 4 faith. So I look over here, decide which one I want to buy. So I could buy 2 priestesses or 1 bishop or 1 sacred guardian, a fierce star, which is a fairly weak attack but you can buff it up by discarding warriors. I'm going to buy Sagittarius. I think she's a great little card. She draws a card and allows you to banish a card in the middle here, which is particularly useful if you're playing with a god who allows you to steal warriors when they're discarded. So I bought a card, I flip, I discard my cards, I then draw my 5 replacement cards, which happen to be 4 as well, but I've made a mistake. When I bought Sagittarius, she doesn't go in the discard pile, she goes on top of your deck. So when I actually draw my deck, I've got my 4 priestesses, but rather than draw what I would have drawn, which is the Sacred Guardian, because I've added that card to my deck, I've actually got Sagittarius. So I play Sagittarius, and she allows me to draw a card, and I can banish a card, which I will do just for argument's sake. But I can't trigger my ability because I've got no cards in my deck, which would make it sensible. But I've got my 4 buy-in power here, so let's say I will buy a fierce star. Okay, it's the end of my turn, and so I have to shuffle up my deck, shuffle it, and 1, 2, 3, 4, not a very good shuffle, but there you go, 5 cards. Okay, now I'm going to be able to show you something here. When I play my hand, I play my 3 priestesses, but I have to be very careful how I play my warriors, because if you notice up in the top corner here there's these 3 colour circles. Now the big circle is your primary colour, the little circles are your follow-on colour. So if I was to play it this way, I'll play Sagittarius first, trigger her ability, go to trigger Fierce Star, and notice I've got a red circle which doesn't chain off grey. If I played them the other way round though, I could play Fierce Star, who is red, she will chain into green and blue, while Sagittarius is green. So I can play both of them and activate both cards, because in the game you can only activate 1 warrior, but if you chain the warriors together you can activate each warrior that you've chained. So I get an attack of 1, I can discard warrior cards to boost my power, and then I can also do Sagittarius, which will draw me a card and allow me to banish a card. So let's do that, and I've now got 3, so I'll buy a priestess who's going to go on top of my deck, discard, draw my 5 new cards, priestess, bishop, warrior, guardian even. Yep, that's 5. So I've now got a buy-in power of 5, so I will now buy a mermaid, and so on and so forth, and away you go. Now at some stage you're going to get some attacky cards. Let's pretend I've got some attacky cards here. So I play Ares, let's have a look, who then chains into Sagittarius, who then chains into, let's see, we need someone with the right colours, Libra, who then chains into Fierce Star. So I've got 2 for Aries, I've then got 1 for Fierce Star, that's 3. Well, a better way of playing it would have been to play the Fierce Star first, then to have played, let's see, blue, Sagittarius, then to play Libra, then to play Aries. And the reason is, Aries gets +2 for every other warrior card with a red symbol, which I've already done, so I'd now have an attack of 5 rather than an attack of 3. I'd be able to draw a card, banishing a card, and I'd also be able to draw another card. So that's great. So I'm now attacking the other player for 5. So they're going to take some damage and lose 5 energy. However, if they've bought, for example, Libra, they can say, in reaction to that, I play this, I've got a defense of 4, I also play my Sacred Guardian, so I've got a defense of 6, your attack of 5 does nothing. However, if they've only got the Libra card, they're going to take 1 damage. If they've only got the Sacred Guardian, they're going to take 3. And that's basically it. It's a pretty simple game. It's got this lovely artwork, which may or may not be to your tastes, and it's got this beautiful colour chaining effect, which I think is really cool. The one thing you do need to look out for is certain combos of cards coming out with certain gods, and if that god player starts buying up the cards, you could be in trouble. You also want to try and get hold of these bishops. They do 2 faith for each card, and then once you've managed to get enough of them, you can start thinning out your deck by trying to get rid of the priestesses. That isn't necessarily easy. I have had trouble trying to thin my deck out. I do probably need to play a bit more to work out which cards are best for doing that, but I really like the mix of the gods. As I say, there are men and female, so you've got Zeus, slightly weird, a bit of a gender bend in Poseidon. She is looking rather unmasculine, I have to say. You've got an unpronounceable kind of cutesy girl there. Hades, looking suitably gruff. Odin, Apollo, Loki, who's got some crazy abilities. Athena, Artemis, and some really nice artwork on all of those. Thor and Hel, and of course the Valkyrie. So a nice selection of gods. I do wish there were more gods. There's quite a few there, admittedly, but I do wish there were some more. There are some promos which I'd like to get hold of over in America, particularly in Gen Con. They had some new ones come out. The basic cards, they're pretty basic. It would be quite nice maybe if there was a couple of extra attack and defend cards, or deck cycling cards, but it's a nice mix of the fixed deck and the random deck, and you get quite a few cards, as you can see. So despite the problems with some of the cards having artwork like this one that some people don't approve of, it's a good little game, and I do recommend you pick it up, as long as your group isn't going to have a problem, as I say, with the artwork.